So there's this triad that I want to touch on that really makes you think about the phrase girl power, right? Girl power. And I want to bring you back to the Garden of Eden. But I want you to take into account two different mythologies, two different storylines. One is the traditional one, orthodox one that you've probably been brought up to believe, with Adam and Eve and the fruits from the tree and the serpent presenting the fruit to Eve. You probably got that. So Eve is the presenter of the forbidden fruit. And if you're really listening closely, in terms of speech to speech, homiletic slang, if you will, it's the Garden of Eden. Consumption, eating, consumption. There's a passage somewhere in the Old Testament that talks about the message is given in a style where the reader can run with it. And in the breeze, things like ing can get left off of words. Enunciations probably of strong consonants, right? So eating becomes eating. What you doing? Eating. On the run. On the run, it sounds like eating will sound like eating, probably, if you're driving by in a car while you say it to somebody. Words that are designed to be captured in the wind. Whole different slant on the Garden of Eden. Is the garden of consumption. What did they do in there? They ate. It came down to the consumption of something. Sort of like the red and the blue pill. The fruit from this tree over here and the other trees, they tend to life, an everlasting life. These were the conditions of the original Orthodox story. But the tree in the middle is the tree of, a lot of people will say of knowledge itself, but they're leaving off the full name of the tree is the knowledge of good and evil. That's what it is. It's not the tree of knowledge. It's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And this is good for what? Here's the next word that can get caught up in the wind. Forbidden. This is forbidding. Not to forbid, not to forbade, forbode, not to keep away from, not to restrict from, but for the purposes of bidding. When you have knowledge of what's good and what's bad, period, when you have the knowledge of it, you know what's going on in this world, you know what's good, you know what's bad. This kind of fruit is good for bidding. It's good for bidding. It raises your stock price. It increases your appraisal limit. Knowing good and evil, having the knowledge of good and evil. We're not talking about choosing sin. We're not talking about anything demonic or what you would call evil, right? We're saying, we're using the words that's there. We're looking at it like it's slang. And we're saying, forbidding that kind of fruit. That's the knowledge of good and evil. Not just the knowledge of good, because it's not just good going on in the world. It's evil going on in the world. If this world was just good, the fruit would be the knowledge of good. If this world was just evil, it'd be the fruit of the knowledge of evil. But it's not. It's the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. So that's without even putting anything else on it. Because when you go into the storyline further, that's when you get into the right-hand path philosophy and talking about how choosing something outside of the original paradise design caused Adam and Eve to feel exposed, to feel vulnerable, because they disobeyed a command. A command was disobeyed. That's one story of girl power. So Eve presents the knowledge of what's going on in the world for the purposes of bidding, like a lioness. The lionesses do the hunting for the pack. When you're talking about the lions, it's the lionesses that have a knowledge of good and evil when it comes down to hunting. They hunt in packs. They know how to stalk. They know how to corral. They know how to herd. They know how to trap, right? They know how to funnel a particular prey or target or meal. They know how to trap their prey. They know how to hunt. They know how to acquire. They're bringing Adam, who is the lion. They know how to bring the food back to the den for the male lion and the cubs. That's Eve, though. Girl power. She presents the fruit, which is for bidding. If you want to bid, what are you going to bid with? Knowledge, if you don't have anything else. Knowledge is going to help you to acquire everything else. The know-how, right? The know-how. Here's version B of the story of the Garden of Eden. You had Lilith, a primordial female angel entity who was already assigned and basically a mail order bride for Adam. And Jehovah set this up, the God known as Jehovah out of the Elohim, when Jehovah was on the chair in the middle of the 24 elder circle, right? Or you want to say the 24 elder scientists, however you want to believe it. I'm just using the cosmologies there. And you know 24 elders are an elder is an hour, right? So you're ruler every hour of the day, and this is your multiplicity of opportunity for God expression. You got 24 clip. But that's a whole nother conversation. Back to this version of it where you got Lilith. I want to focus in on her, right? Opposite of Eve, Lilith is the one who pulls away. So she went against the arrangement, and of course she was originally betrothed and hooked up with Samael, the archangel. So there was already an angelic union that took place according to the left hand mythos of the Garden of Eden. And she refused. Her and Samael got together and they created all of the incubi and succubi. So they're basically the mother and father of lust. They said, wait a minute, you had desires to just pawn us off to whoever, oh Elohim. So here we are now refusing your fruit, where in version A, with Adam, Eve, and the serpent, they were receiving the serpent's fruit. So then you have them refusing in version B Jehovah's fruit. And that fruit was also rejected in version A, because if he didn't want them to eat from this particular tree of the knowledge of good and evil, then they rejected his fruit anyway, which was the tree of life, and whatever other fruits on the trees were around, those were his, just like the one with the knowledge of good and evil entailed in it was his also. Interesting story. Understanding the context is better than stronger and more effective and more magical than believing whether or not the mythos is true. We're not asking you to believe in the mythos. Girl power, we're telling you the different levels of the divine feminine, which is what? The ability to receive. So you're gonna receive the knowledge of all that there is. That's quintessentially feminine. It is quintessentially feminine to be receptive. So it comes in a trinity, or we could present it in a triad of phases. One is to receive the knowledge of good and evil on the land. So from that tree was planted from the ground, on the ground level. You could receive it like Eve, who was what? The mother of all living. So she became the mother, the womb, the head recipient of what happens on the physical plane, 3D. So a part of you does this, a part of me does this. This is what we do. We take on impressions that happens in this life. Everything that happens on this ground we walk on, right? We're taking that in. We're eating from that fruit. We're learning about what's good here, what's bad here. We're eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil right now, just by learning. Version B, we're deciding which parts to accept, which parts to reject. So now that we know what good and evil is, we understand that that can also be subjective. And while everybody else might agree to one thing, if we're under oppression under another, we have the right and the ability to reject a fruit that we believe will not nourish us and will not advance us forward. So that's Lilith and her connection to Samael. And with this, if we decide to go our own way, we have to form our desire now. We're getting out from underneath someone else's desire for us. Whether you want to call it God or you want to call it somebody just trying to be over you like a god. Now you forming your own desire, and with that desire comes the offspring of more desirous energy. So your desire to do your thing has to multiply now that you've chosen. You planted that seed, now that seed's grown. They call it incubi, succubi. The term is usually connected to very passionate, very sensual, sexual energies. But if we're talking about it like that, and we take all of the theatrics out of it, you're just talking about setting up reproduction and increasing pleasure versus what? Being oppressed and being depressed all your life and feeling miserable. To fight for your right to pleasure, for your right to have a pleasing life, to reject the other fruit, to choose from whatever fruit you want if it means your life will be more pleasing, not just in sensation but in true living. You're a pleasure to be around. Not because you was just eating from the tree of life. That's only going to extend your life. They didn't even know they were naked. They were eternal, but knowing nothing. With that, knowing nothing becomes that you get that ignorance is bliss, not really being a shield, but being more so of a delay or a stall tactic. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is delay. That's putting off. That's postponement. That's what that is. That's postponement. So that's the second phase of girl power, the ability to receive. So now you choosing. That's cerebral. You choosing your own desires. You could say that the desires is the heart, but remember, we said the heart can't lead. It can only follow. So your thoughts, you've chosen consciously, mentally, to eat from another fruit, from another tree. You chose your own way. You chose your own path. You chose it. You have the right to choose. You're supposed to choose your way. Who else could you follow when you have your own unique path? You got your own unique life to live. Last phase is really, this is Lilith divided into two phases. You have Lilith the elder that starts in the cerebral, and then finally you have Nema, or you would call it her Lilith the younger. How it's explained in the clip-offs is, as you're like descended through the triads, the idea of Lilith becomes more physical in her expression. And she's basically like, she's the framework, she's the architecture of the reality that you live in. That's what Lilith really represents. Not just this vampire queen thing, like, oh, she's the demoness vampires, you know what I mean? The vampire queen, the demon lovers, and this is the expression of that at the Nema level. Or you can maybe you could say Ereshkigal, whichever thing you associate with that. Maybe Kali in one of her personalities, but you get the picture. When the desire comes back down to the earth, it's gonna express itself physically around you. Just by you choosing your own fruit, it's gonna reproduce itself in the land before you. So choose carefully and just know your fruits. The temptation sometimes is this, I guess, if you want to go with the version A story. Living forever or having wisdom. Knowledge leads to wisdom. How could they have been wise without it? Wisdom is the correct application of knowledge, but without having knowledge of neither good nor evil, although they would live forever, what would they know? Interesting question. Super T Sigma of Sigma Programming, thank you for your time and attention. Continue to stay empowered. Peace.